All right, folks, we are finally sitting back to talk some more X-Wing, and we're going to look a little bit at Worlds prep. But before we prime into that, we're getting to this point where we have to do this fairly quickly, because if you're prepping for Worlds, it's only a short couple months away. I think actually maybe less than two even. So we're getting down to the wire. And if you're not already testing and flying out your squad, you probably should be. I hear that usually the top teams or the top pilots practice way, way in advance and really settle their squad very early. And now it's getting to be a little bit late to change, but it's not too late. So while we're still here, we're going to go ahead and get this out. I'm going to talk a little bit more about hype and promo stuff around Worlds as we get to that. I do want to cover individual pilots. So big things I want to talk about. I want to talk about rough faction rankings, and shout out to Levi of OB Win Xwing. We're going to look at Team USA, one of the bigger teams out there, and their ranking of the individual factions. We're going to look at some individual pilot play rates and win rates. But I've talked before about a series I want to do that's covering the most underrated pilots in each individual faction. Because while we have some known quantities, we are using a 50-point base system that's only had active points since October 26th. What is that? Yeah, September, October 26th of last year. So it's still very new. The meta is still very flexible and changeable. And we have kind of less of a feel for it than ever before because it's so completely new. And the podcast scene is a little bit in chaos. So we're getting there. I'm going to go ahead and do my quick list. I actually talked to Ollie Pocknell of the 186 Squadron, who gave me his list as well and permission to share it, but I'll shout him out on all of those. And then I spoke to a couple buddies of mine and also got them in on this as well. Um, Yes, so let's dive right in. So first of all, we have some actual Longshanks data, and this is actual tournament data talking about the total number of games played, the wins played, and has pretty stellar statistics here on kind of where everything stands. And this is all seven factions, with the clear winner being Scum and Villainy at 56% win rate with several hundred games. 51% goes to Separatists, the second. It's really funny to see that because those were the bottom two for a really long time. Then we got First Order at third, actually tied for second. First Order is tied for second, and it's actually very, very close with Resistance, which that's funny because a lot of the time you hear people talking about the factions, Resistance is usually not highly ranked. People don't really believe in Resistance all that much as a strong faction. That could be because of what pieces people are flying and what people are trying, but that's the numbers say that Resistance is doing quite well. A little dip down to Galactic Empire with a full 12% difference in win rate between Empire and Scum. So middle to top is a 12% difference. No, excuse me, that's an 8% difference. Wow, that's not as bad. Okay. And then next we have Galactic Republic at a 47% win rate, and then Rebel Alliance at a 43% win rate, which is you can look at the numbers here, and Scum is dominating the numbers in part because they have the most games played. Republic actually has the fewest games played, which does impact their overall score. Now, top and bottom, the top faction, of course, Scum and Villainy, 56% win rate. Rebel Alliance is 43. That is a 13%. I'm doing the math wrong again. 7 plus 6 is a 13% difference. Um, yeah, so a 13% difference between the top performing faction and the bottom performing faction. And Rebels have been the top of the meta for a really long time, and they still have a lot of strong pieces. So I wonder if there is something there, and would especially love if you're prepping for Worlds and don't mind sharing, or you're just playing a lot of Rebels. If you have a really strong winning record with Rebels, I'd really love to hear from you, and a lot of players out there would especially like to hear that. I love Scum, so I'm happy to see Scum on top, but I'm also always rooting for the underdog. So whichever faction is in the worst spot, that's the one I'm going to talk about a lot, trying to find the secret sauce to help them kind of find their glory, right? I would love it if every single one of these numbers was a 50%, if we had a perfectly clean, evenly balanced meta across the board. But for most of these factions, from 56 to 48 is 8% spread, which is notable. But 56 to 50 is pretty close. So those top four factions are really, really tight. And this is one of the more balanced metas that we have seen. But let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we have the individual Team USA rankings. See, so first of all, we've got Liam Lee says S tier, S plus tier for Scum, top of the top, clearly just the strongest faction outright. A minus to Republic, so that's an interesting one. And then Empire and Resistance at a B plus, then B minus to Separatists. So Empire, Resistance, Separatists all lumped fairly together, which is very close to what we just saw in the statistics. Then we've got a C plus to First Order, which was actually better if I saw that correctly, and D minus to Rebels, so a really bad ranking on Rebels. Let's see. Some keynotes I believe need to be taken into mind to take an accurate assessment. What does a faction do well at it, and what with what is currently available to it? Uh, see, Scum and Villainy faction is the overall best one out there at current. Dominant archetype is 3 high initiative, high consistency ships. Okay, so ships that hit a lot and can take some damage. Role is Shining Stars Fen Rao, and the armed and dangerous Fen Rao, the expensive standard loadout one, is winning at this point. Okay. In general, his consistency is in getting 5 die attacks extremely often, being able to essentially add an evade result to his already 3 agility, defense at range 1 to 2, and then contraband cybernetics, 1 to 2 contraband cybernetics a game. Okay. And realistically, 2 extra health over the custom pilot. Wow. Couple that with the second most popular build being the Mandalorian with Jabba, which I hadn't seen that at all, actually, so that's kind of cool to see. So the Mandalorian with Jabba and overtune modulators. Yes, I had. What am I talking about? You already have 2 ships that you would need to dedicate an entire list to defeating. So very durable ships, both hit hard and also can tank a ton of hit points. They are 2 of the star chassis of modern Scum and Villainy. They're like the top 2 scummy bounty hunter pilots out there, so I'd love to see them dominating the meta. But at the same time, this is a vote that both are a little bit too powerful. But I can't see Fen Rao getting nerfed in points too much. That would really shut him down dramatically. And this doesn't seem like that powerful of a Mandalorian build, but I may be just be missing something. Let's see, other staples. Boba Fett, Dengar, Han, Guri, and Maul. Maul. All these pilots can in some way, shape, or form have a consistent damage output at high initiative while mitigating their damage intake in some way as well. Also neglects to mention the other popular options in the faction, such as Drea and Sarasu Swarms, which Drea gives the offensive buff to generics, Sarasu gives a defensive buff to generics. Not only is Scum and Villainy dominating at the low ship count lists, but the high ship count lists as well. And that's interesting to hear. Yeah, I got to tuck into some of the lists more. That's pretty cool. Let's see, 40% of the overall field, right? So the high play rate of Scum and Villainy is also contributing to that win rate as well, because if you have more games, you're going to have more wins too, unless you're definitely the weaker faction. So more representation means a higher overall win percentage if your power level is relatively even. Because if you're middle of the pack, but you're playing against a third of your games are against factions that are a little bit lower powered, that's going to skew the numbers in your favor just because of number of appearances. Um, let's see, favorable matchup into 4 out of the 6 other factions. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Let's see, with an almost favorable matchup. Galactic Road. Okay, what's funny is Republic is one of the worst performing factions, but has the strongest performance into Scum, according to this. Interesting. This is a really long blog, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. We're going to skip around a little bit. I'll get to the next ranking. Andrew Benjamin says Scum is S, Empire's A plus, Resistance is A. So Resistance is factoring well here. Republic and CIS and First Order are all B plus, and then Rebels are B minus. Again, rating Rebels at the bottom. Rebels are definitely in a weaker spot right now. I feel I echo the opinions of many in stating the premium they pay for some of their high cost ships feels disproportionately high. Most of their higher tiered ships, such as Wedge Antilles and Luke Skywalker and the Xwing, feel like they're undertuned in either their offense or survivability. And one thing that led to Rebels' dominance in previous metas for a long time was the number of ships they were able to pack in, plus the high-end power pieces. So they might have been over nerfed here, but one of the reasons that they performed well was a little bit too much quantity on top of high quality. So their quality's gone down a little bit just because of cost, but their quantity's gone down dramatically, which is at a double whammy impact. So being able to take one fewer ship in the current meta with the previous outstanding pilots is bad. Um, Also, with the way scoring runs now, that kind of works against Rebels as well, where it's a little bit less objective focused, and Rebels really shown with a couple of really excellent objective grabbers, noticeably Sabine Tai. Since you can't win exclusively on objectives as consistently, that does put Rebels in the back foot based on how people have been flying them for a while. So there's a new kind of meta shift there. Let's see here. Then we've got Empire A+. Empire's in a really fun place right now. Their high-cost base ships feel like they're in a premium but playable place. And the 50-point system, the current balance of points, the overall just lower ship count really benefits Initiative 6 aces. which Empire has the most of. So no surprise there that Empire is performing very well. Let's see. They still have a long list of strong pieces that aren't in those two main archetypes. Ooh, let's see. So yeah, so Swarms, Goran Swarm, and then also their aces. So Empire again has the Swarm and the high ace play that do really well. They don't have the power durability play that Scum has, which is something that is very favored right now. Um, and just to go back to that meta note, one of the reasons Scum performs really well is Scum has a lot of points fortresses. That is a small squad of ships that are very durable, so you have to really focus them down to get your kill points, and they will get more kill points than they give up. Scum was very, very weak in an objective dominated meta. Now that we've kept Scum similar, but changed the scoring a little bit so that kill points are more favored, their points fortress and offense is a more powerful meta staple now. So in reverse of Rebels, because the entire meta has shifted to favor what Scum already was and away from what Rebels have been, you get that big meta shift. Republic B plus, this one is a bit of a challenge. Republic feels like it possibly the highest skill ceiling faction in the game, and whatever is good for Imperial aces is also good for Republic aces, in theory. Uh, Having double repositioned with Jedi pilots that don't stress the pilot, as well as extremely easy access to double modded offense without removing all defensive mods. So the Force runs rampant in Republic, so they should have a really good moment in the meta right now. They feel like the strongest contender against the current Scum meta by being able to outmaneuver a large number of the medium and large bases. And that's true. Scum aces do not have anywhere near the maneuverability of Republic. The Republic Arc 170 still has successful play with ships such as Wolf and Isla Secura crew, and Sinker offering rerolls. While their durability may be slightly lower than other factions in firepower and initiative, their ability to take mods like Dedicated definitely keep them on par with other factions' beef. However, they are also possibly the fastest faction to die to, yeah, their high, what's that, RNG, random number generator, to one bad roll of a green die. Overextending ships can easily lead to a death sentence. However, but that's true right now with the lower ship count meta in general. Now, saying Republic is the most vulnerable to that, sure, that could contribute to the high or the lower win rate than the other factions. So that is a big thing to keep in mind when building your Republic lists. I feel the strengths outweigh the weaknesses, and top tier Republic players put them as possibly the strongest faction in the game. Interesting. And we have seen metas where there were lower ship count, where things like Anakin with Chopper, Astromech really could be punishing, especially to aces and counter ace play. So we'll see. CIS B plus. CIS is absolutely still the king of objectives, sure, with objective play downgraded a little bit, and it isn't even close in my opinion. CIS remains one of the factions most capable of still winning a pure objective game. And they are much stronger now because one of their challenges was they were had the number of bodies was a bigger disadvantage than an advantage in previous metas. With overall ship count and squad sizes coming down, CIS has a little bit of an edge. Just even if they were totally unchanged, just 1-to-1 moved over, they would have a bit of an edge. And they got a couple buffs to key pilots recently as well. Let's see, there's no other faction that has such a useful tool as a generic 5-point vulture, parking on a rock next to an objective and just grabbing points consistently. It will always trade up, bar none, yeah. In addition, there's still insanely strong pieces like Grievous, Sunfac, and DIST-81. Sunfac also really gains a lot of power being in a lower ship count meta. Uh, and DIST-81, the Siege of Coruscant standard loadout version, that's the Tri-Fighter, that can consistently perform well as other pieces outside the usual droid swarm, such as Maul and Jango Fett, that can guarantee results by carrying Count Dooku or double stress ace ships with Palpatine. Yeah. Gameplay distribution will always be strong in the mental part of the game, and that brings CIS to a solid B+, possibly an A-. A counterpoint there, every single one of these has highlighted where a faction is capable of ace play, beef play, and swarm play. It is very difficult to build a list that is good against all three of those. You're always going to have a bad matchup into swarms, into beef, into aces, or maybe you can handle two of those three. But having all three of those actively in the meta is very healthy, but that also is a big challenge in list building. And especially if you're doing just a pure droid swarm, you'll be more vulnerable to beef. If you're doing a or vulnerable to aces. Like I feel like two out of the three are bad matchups in that case, especially since objectives are, while still good, a very challenging way to purely win the game. So you do need to balance that. And CIS has a lot of tricky tools that they've always had, but they gained a little buff now that other factions have smaller lists. And I think that swarm to swarm CIS does have a little bit of an edge over something like a Z95 swarm, just because they have a little bit more flexibility in tools and can pack in more aces with their swarms. So you can do a pretty beefy ace. You can do an ace beef combo and still run up to like 6 or 7 ships with CIS because they have the cheapest swarm ship in there too. So there's a lot you can do there. But that flexibility helps them out a lot in the current meta. Resistance, A minus. Resistance is in such a fun yet awkward place right now. The faction that at one point could throw out an insane amount of beef with Zori Teza wartime combo of double munitions has lost a small amount of that firepower in the loss of guaranteed double mods. However, their T70s and A-Wings are where I personally believe they shine. All 4 versions of Poe are viable at their point values. The Num is extremely fun and rewarding when taking advantage of pattern analyzer and munitions. Tem and Anemi consistently trade up and offer strong, consistent damage output. For A-Wing, ZZ is an incredible pick. I've heard that before. With proton rockets and optics, Lulo's in a strong spot, being a strong I-5 starboard / ship at only 10 points. I also think there are some insanely strong choices in the Resistance bombers, with ships like Cat being only 15 points. Swarming her up to I6 with Poe and taking Perceptive Co-Pilot, Veteran Turret Gunner, and Hotshot Gunner has been a really fun option for me lately. That is gnarly to get double shots with Hotshot Gunner to pull off tokens. And at Initiative 6, you can do it before other ships activate. While it may be slightly limited due to the small number of chassis, the versatility of pieces more than makes up for their shortcoming. And if you've looked at the rosters anytime recently, the A-Wing roster and T70 roster, Resistance has so many pilot options. They don't have a ton of ship options, but they have so many pilot options stacked into a couple of them. First Order Foe is currently my favorite Ace faction. Being able to fly Silencer, Kylo, Blackout, Malorus, and Scorch. So 4 ship, strong ace, all of them have shields. Feels so strong to me. Alternatively, there are whispers of a list using 4 bombers and a she shuttle that can effectively carpet bomb a large portion of the map, which is really bad if Republic does run ace play. Much like Resistance, it may be slightly limited due to the small number of chassis, but the individual pieces are very strong. FO, because of just the strength of individual pieces, has always terrified me as a faction. 1-to-1, FO has the best ships in the game, I would argue, at any individual points value. Their pieces are efficient, they're very powerful, and they have a lot of potential. They don't have as much frost ship synergy as you might get in some of the other factions, and they don't have quite as many dirty tricks as, say, Scum. But the chassis themselves, I think, the core chassis have always been a little bit overpowered over the alternatives from other factions. So it doesn't surprise me they're kind of in the middle of the road because they don't have the extra tricks or the ceiling necessarily of some others, but their floor is really high. So if you're a newer beginning player, you're faction agnostic, you don't really care, I think your best bet as like a arguably a beginner friendly faction is going to be First Order, which is interesting. Scum S. The thing that currently makes Scum strong, in my opinion, is just the variety over anything else, and the faction is massive. I keep sort of talking about this more or less seriously that faction could benefit from being split in half. Smugglers and runaways or something, and then pirates and bounty hunters, for example. Split it in half in a way that makes sense and have some crossover chassis, but give the opportunity to balance the faction in a more meaningful way. Whereas right now you have so many ships and pieces, it's very challenging to balance them cleanly. I don't necessarily want that as a Scum pilot because I like how it mixes now, but it would be a sensible way because of the volume of ships, the volume of pilots, the variety of things they can do, and how hard it's been historically to balance Scum. Like that would be an alternative to make it a little bit easier. But you want aces? Take Fen and Guri. You want beef? Boba. Nim, Dengar. Don't even get me started on Mando taking Jabba tuned. Apparently that's a big deal. As well as Mando optics with false transponder codes as the hidden extra illicit from the title. Possibly the strongest piece in the faction for the cost, saying Mando. Seeing the ST70 Mando be one of the strongest pieces in Scum makes me so happy. It sounds like it might be problematic, but having that ship actually have a meta impact is nice because it's been pretty dumpster for a very long time. So cool to hear that, but we'll see. Janky disruption lists using pieces like Torkel make opponents choose between focusing down on the cheapest part of the list or just accepting that something is completely breaking standard gameplay. Ooh, that sounds like personal beef right there. All of this happens while being very forgiving on mistakes, making Scum the clear-cut strongest faction in the game, which is crazy to hear that. While I may not feel it's by leaps and bounds as others feel, there's definitely a gap that needs to be addressed. Okay. And I'd be curious to see exactly what that means. It does sound like Fen Rao is coming up a lot, but I need to watch some of these streams to see where Fen Rao is so powerful. Because unlike what I just said about FO, Fen Rao's ceiling has also been very, very high. But also Fen Rao's floor is rock bottom. That ship should not be consistently winning games just because he's so green dice dependent. So he can have a bad roll and just be taken out in turn one, and then you are pretty much out of luck in a small ship, in a small list. But see. Then we got Levi. Says S is Scum, A plus Empire, A Resistance, B plus CIS, B minus FO, C minus Republic, and D plus Rebels. More very similar themes, especially the top and bottom we're pretty sure about. The middle's a little bit fuzzier, but Republic's at the low end, Empire CIS are at the upper end, and Resistance and FO kind of balance between the middle. Scum is obviously the most oppressive faction. Oppressive, wow. All their heavy hitters are hot right now. Boba Fett, Mando, Guri, Nim. I'll admit there isn't much outside of that, but you can only fly one list at a time anyway. That's true. And you can't take all five of those. So you do have to kind of pick and choose. Empire is doing well for a similar reason. Their high initiative heavy hitters are doing well. Seeing Defender Vader is nice, unless he's across the table from me. Resistance is in a solid place. There's a good mix of pieces that work well together for a few different archetypes. CIS is also performing well, especially compared to its performance a few years ago. Yeah, that's true. They aren't, CIS aren't top dogs, but they aren't afraid to take top dogs on. And that's nice. They should be in a position, every faction should be in a position where it can have a run in each matchup, which that's always been the challenge we're chasing. FO was the hardest to rate. I think they still have some undiscovered gems that could take their list to the top. I put them a little low, but there is more room for improvement. Lastly, I have two of my favorite factions at the bottom. Republic has some good pieces, but nothing to deal with the aces of the Scum and Empire. Rebels are in a tough spot. Four ship lists don't seem to have the right touch. Five ship lists don't have enough going on. Perhaps there's a list out there that can bump them to a C, but it doesn't look promising. And I have thoughts on that with some of my underrated pilots. Then we go back to the Longshanks data, and this puts us here. So again, Rebel Alliance comfortably at the bottom, Galactic Republic a close second, Empire close to that, still not that much distinctively ahead of Republic, even with all the tools that Empire has. Resistance showing up pretty comfortably above both of them, with First Order right next to it, Separatist tied right there. Those three are just right there in the middle very comfortably. And that's a great spread. 51%, 51%, 50%, 48. Like that core middle is so tight that those could flip comfortably with a couple extra games in each. Um, but Scum and Rebels both stand out as significantly further ahead and behind the next closest faction with a good number of stats here. So this is decent statistics that we can run by, and hopefully that's not too small to read. Um, but yeah, I'll link to this article in the recording so you can see that as well. Going to go on to the next. We're looking at, let's actually come back to this. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my underrated pilots for each faction. I have one, Ollie has one. And actually, let me see if I can call in some backup while I'm talking about this. All right, and then we will go ahead and look at our faction breakdown here. I got to pull up Ollie's message because that's where I wrote mine down too. So for me, my top, I'm going to start with Rebels, and that's Custom Tycho. I think that A-Wings are probably the most underrated chassis in Rebels right now. And Custom Tycho in particular stands out as just a really, really strong piece, just because he's got a couple pretty significant advantages. For one, he's fairly cheap, very, very fast. So comfortable getting objectives and also comfortable getting fighting. And one thing I really like about Tycho, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. One thing I really like about Tycho is the current build of him comfortably has space for rockets, your proton rockets. And with his ability of the base A-Wing chassis ability to do an action and then boost plus rockets, he can focus boost at initiative 5 and get a very, very nasty attack. He can only do it once per game, of course, and I miss taking the cannon on him, but I really like him with Daredevil to give him that hard boost So he can turn a, well, actually, hang on, does that even work? I think that turns a white. Yeah. So he can't do that with the double action, but that does give him positioning options that I really enjoy. So that Daredevil Prockets option gives you a ton of mobility for objectives and can put you in sensitive places to throw your 5 dice. It's very good, and an Initiative 5 A-Wing at 11 points is still good. The other piece that's my probably, and this one, I'm going to cheat a little bit. It's not going to be just one. We'll talk about a couple underrated pieces. And just to backtrack a little bit, when I'm talking underrated pieces, I'm talking pieces that I think are really strong in the current points and potentially meta that no one's talking about or running, really. Sabine A-Wing, I will shout from the rooftops how good Sabine is because Sabine's ability is insane. She's a Fang fighter with shields. I mean, less attack, of course, but she's a Fang fighter with shields. She's got Concordia face-off, and she has built-in Fearless because she has both the defensive and offensive sides of the Fang fighter's built-in ability. She's got the, yeah, so she's got Fearless stapled to her, and then she also has, let's see, yeah, while you defend orb, yes. So she has the Fearless mod on attacks, and then she's got the Concordia face-off on evades. So that makes her insanely durable of a jouster, and she's coming in at only 8 points. Her initiative sucks, but I mean, who cares? She's a really, really good blocker, a great brawler, somebody to just kind of throw in there, and a budget piece if you need to add more ships to the field. She's a budget piece that is not going to just completely blow up in a puff of smoke and has some reasonable offense with that consistency. The focus boost or evade boost option with the A-Wing of Cassie makes her just very, very strong. So I said those two. Ollie said Blue Squadron B-Wing, the generic B-Wing. And this is one of those things where the meta's new. There's so much stuff that we just haven't even looked at. The Blue Squadron Pilot B-Wing is a 10-point B-Wing. Okay. Let's see. He said cannons and FCS mixed with thread tracers. So let's say we go with a proton cannon, and then we've got a thread tracer, and then we've got fire control system. That's 11. We can't do that. Then you can run 5 of these is an important point. So if you have one with tracers and you have, yes, we can take this off, remove that. Yeah, okay. So you could do cannons, and I think synced lasers fits on this. Let's remove that and see if I can do this. Ooh, no, okay. So if you're going ion cannon or auto blasters or something, you can do that. But you can do a mix of cannons plus fire control system, and you can run 5 of those at 50 points. So you've got a 10-point filler you can put in just in this B wing, or you can run a mass of 5 of those. I wonder. I don't know that I fully agree with that one, but that's what was said. So I wanted to go ahead and throw that out there. Again, these are pilots that are not seeing a ton of play, I think are standouts. And I did want to get Ollie's opinion on that as well, because, let's see. How do I change my faction? How do I change my faction? See, new, there we go. Okay, so we're going to go from Rebels, we're going to go to Imperials. And here we've already talked about the advantage of aces. We've talked about all the stuff that Imperials have. But for me personally, the standout that stands out to me is, and I'm not saying these are going to be your core pieces that are going to win you the game. What I'm saying is these are pieces to consider if you're looking to squeeze extra stuff into a list, or if you're trying to get a little bit of extra mileage out of your other pieces. And so for me, the one I really like is Sienna Ree. So for 1 point less than Sunterfell, the for 1 point less than the cheap Sunterfell and multiple points lower than the more expensive one, you do have an I6 who can take Swarm Tactics or Squad Leader. And I really like her with Squad Leader because she has the ability to just take tokens and she can just remove stress clearly. She's a great objective piece. So there is a downside to her, but she has both a buff and a nerf in terms of her ability, where she gets a bonus if a friendly ship gets destroyed, gets a penalty if she destroys an opposing ship, but it's not that bad. Yes, so she can action, then barrel roll, or action or boost, and can remove stress if you're losing ships. But I really like her with squad leader, so she can squad leader and then boost or barrel roll to put her in a nasty spot. So you have a way to coordinate your friendly ships at I6 Yeah, so you have an I6 coordinator for 11 points that you can just throw on the board. That by itself is super, super good. Or you can take her with Swarm Tactics. Either option then still gives you a couple points to play with to do a little bit like I would, of course, probably go with a targeting computer, just for those times when you don't want to use the action for coordinate or you have something else going on. So pretty darn good. And again, a budget I6 interceptor. This is the piece that really stood out to me as a very, very strong piece that I haven't seen anyone talking about. And of course, we got something weird from Ollie on this one. So he said the TIE aggressor generic. So I guess that's just the CNR specialist, or so look, yeah, the 7 cost. So the base I2 CNR specialist with a ion turret. All right. Yeah, so that's it right there. It's just a 7-point ship, which is definitely budget side. Only has the 2 evade, but it's got an ion cannon turret. It's cheap. You can put a lot of these on the board, or you can fill in. So instead of having one 14-point ship, you could have 2 of these, double your presence on the board, make it twice as hard to deal with, and hit some stuff with ion. It's pretty good, and that gives you 3 attack dice instead of the 2, so it gives you some meaningful offense over the 2, and it's a turret, so you can really kind of muck around with what you're able to do with this thing. And it has the barrel roll to evade action, which is a fun one if you have a turret facing sideways and need to make it hard to get, be a little slippery. So that's those two. Empire doesn't need much help, so in terms of the underrated stuff, we're looking at the upper end where you can shave some points off your ace or add another I6 on top of your other ones. Sienna reflying with Sunterfell is like what, 23 points, so a little bit less than half your squad. And if you have Sienna with squad leader, she can be an extra piece to really supercharge your Sunterfell and give you something else for people to chase after as like, we got to kill that I6. And having a coordinator that can keep up with and activate either before or after your I6 aces is so powerful. Even if she takes 11 points and could go up in a puff of smoke, I still shout out her. And then the CNR specialist just being a cheap budget piece, you can do a lot with that. And there are a couple named pilots that have buffs that would apply to these guys as well. Like, for example, they could attack before they're removed, even if they're destroyed and an initiative killed. Or what are the other ones? There are some ways to give them rerolls as well. So that's pretty good. Next up, we have Scum. And this is going to be a funny one. Um, Mine is going to be a bit of a weird pick, but when I personally am list building with Scum, and I think I've mentioned this one before, this is a key challenge that I end up having where it's really hard to find stuff at the bottom edge of the point scale that is worth taking and doesn't just feel like a waste. So a lot of the time I'll take like the 2, maybe 3 ships that I really want, and then I'll have 8 points at the end that I can't figure out what to do with. And Gargor consistently comes up as a piece that will fit as a non-zero pilot ability, is an almost guaranteed blocker, and you can make him quite nasty now by giving him auto blasters. So Gargor with auto blasters, we haven't had auto blasters in the game for all that long as something you can take in the meta. And your 0 point, your 0 initiative 7 cost ship that automatically hurts enemies if they try to shoot at him is a really good objective grabber to throw into dangerous places and then potentially benefit from his ability. If you're looking at putting some scum power pieces together, doing kind of a hammer and anvil approach where you want 2 power pieces and then 2 to 3 smaller pieces to run around the board, Gargor is my personal top pick as one to throw in there and is a really, really strong one that helps me at the bottom. Let's see. This, oh, I gotta laugh at this because some of these picks I'm like, which I've kind of given a side eye to all of them, but I appreciate having the variety of opinions on this one because this is a very opinion-based conversation. And it's going to get more exciting as we get to some of the lower performing factions. Although I do stand by A-Wings as being an unexplored gold in Rebels. Quick bonus shout out on that to Wedge A-Wing. Much cheaper than the Xwing Wedge, and the amount of damage he's able to put into things like TIE fighters, squishy little cheap ships. He still has Wedge X-Wing's ability to reduce defenders' agility, which is super, super good if you're plinking TIE fighters or small objective grabbers or droids. If you need to take those out, a droid rolling 1 evade die is a sad droid. And he's quick, he's durable, he's cheap. So if you're looking for a way to fill that out, a couple A-Wings like A-Wing Wedge and Sabine are really, really good to up the ship count of your rebel list and keep some of your power pieces in play and maybe go up to a 5 ship list which should perform better in the current meta than some of the four-ship ones. Drew. So it's a Z95. It's a scum Z95, so the dial is a dumpster fire. I don't see paying 8 points for a Z95, even if that's relatively comparative to the total list is a little bit less than maybe it was. Uh, Ton of loadout. Works great as a flanker. Yeah, he's got 14 loadouts. What's the scariest thing we can put on that? We could give him barrage rockets. He doesn't have double missile slots. Um, you can give him proton rockets, which I wouldn't because he has to be close. He can have mag pulse, cluster missiles. I mean, he can do some stuff. He's I4, so I don't love mag pulse on him. Don't love prockets on him, although he could do a 6-die procket. That's fun. If you're flanking around with a 6-die procket, all right, let's do this. We'll go ahead and do this and elusive, right? And he's got plenty of red on the dial. No, he really doesn't, just the K-turns, but you can still stress him out. He's got the red barrel roll if you need to stress him. Or, well, yeah, elusive only charges on those. And he's got the illicit, so he could do. No, I can't do that. Okay, let's not do elusive on him. So we've got 2 points to play with. Just remove this. Yeah, we have 2 points to play with on the talent. We can do talent or modification. And cutthroat or marksmanship both make sense. So Procket's marksmanship is not bad, but it's really the chassis and the stats. I have flown a lot of Scum Z95s, including him, and Bosk was a fine objective grabber when Bosk was kind of ruling the meta. I'm less sure about Andrew. And Bosk is still kicking around at 8. So for Bosk at the same points, I would take Bosk over Andrew every time, just because it's actually still pretty hard to have no friendly ships at range 0 to 2 and still be in a place where you want that ship to be impactful. So yes, he can be Z95 that throws 3 dice as a distant flanker, but most games, when you really need him to be impactful, he's going to clip that range 2 of one of your other ships. So, but I don't know. What do I know? Ollie is a better player than me and a better list builder than me, so I can't judge him on this one. But these are two picks, and we both kind of came at this from the same direction, where you have such good pilots and scum at the upper end of the points range. It's challenging to find stuff at the lower end of the points range, so you can bump up your ship count, or you can find some filler stuff to fill in some gaps. Um, and if scum stays as it is, you probably won't need to look at these. If scum gets any slight nerfs to some of the most powerful pieces, you may be looking for some alternative ways to play, and so it's good to have these on your radar. Oh, and then we're going to resistance. And this is another shout out here. I know I keep going back to Rebels, but they are the ultimate underdogs, so they want to keep going back to. Battle over Endor Lando is one of my favorite ships in the game for the sheer flexibility he has. He's got coordinatability, he's got variable initiative, he's a Falcon, so you can do a lot with him. He's relatively cheap compared to other Falcon pilots, and he's got both coordinate and all these offensive mods. Like he's super, super good and very fun. Definitely a piece to look at and try out. Downside being he's very complicated, so he takes a lot of practice to fly, and I believe a lot of his abilities run out of charges. But he's good, and I would definitely reach for him and some A-Wings if I was building a Rebel list right now. Okay, so for Resistance, I said, speaking of Falcons, the thing that still haunts my nightmares is Rey. And nothing has fundamentally changed about Rey. She's just a massive punch gun where she hits so hard in the forward arc, having so many mods, such reliable offense, and such incredibly powerful crew options in Resistance. Like, Resistance crew are the envy of the rest of the universe. Like, they are nuts. They're so powerful. Um, so yeah, Ray Falcon still scares the bejesus out of me. I'm pretty shocked to not see her played much, considering how strong she's been in previous metas. The thing is, she was played a lot, and so a lot of older players learned how to deal with her and how to counter her, that is, staying out of forward arc. But that does not in any way diminish how scary she is. As a jouster, as a piece that it's like, oops, I clipped your front arc. Oh crap. She is very, very good. So she still gets my top pick and is one I don't hear talked about very much, um, if at all. And she's up there for, yeah, she's pretty comfortably the second most expensive. Of course, Poe and Han being the i6 versions are very, very good, with Poe especially being a standout. Um, He's pretty scary, but I still bet on Ray being that 1 point cheaper, but also having the force and the level of consistency that Poe doesn't, even if you lose that I6. Let's see. And Ollie actually echoed the Team USA with an A-Wing. And I think A-Wings are very strong. They've really benefited from the overall smaller list size. And with people not prioritizing objectives as much, they don't help you as much, but that does mean there's less contesting them. So if you have the option to play objective grabbers, they can give you an edge in close matches to pull out your wins. And so he said, Lulo. Lulo Lampard coming in at 10, which is pretty reasonable for this. And I have to read Lulo's ability because I don't hear it very often. While you defend or perform a primary attack, if you are stressed, you must roll one fewer defense die or one additional attack die. So if he's stressed, he hits harder, but is also easier to hit. Okay, so he turns into an Xwing when he's stressed. Okay. I don't know how I'd missed that ability. That's nuts. Um, yeah, and it doesn't, oh, it is a primary attack. Okay. Um, yeah, just still pretty darn good. Him throwing the extra dice, and this is a ship that can easily get stressed with all the maneuvering and turning around it gets, especially since this has the same rebel ability too, where he can action boost to stress himself. So he could focus boost and then be a 3-die gun in somewhere you don't want him. So I would still be inclined to give him Daredevil as well, because that also is a way that he can get stressed and a way you can get him into sort of awkward places. Okay, next up, he's got enough loadout that Ollie says, I think he's going to be a menace. All right, next up, we're on First Order. And we are starting with my vote. Oh, yeah, and I stand by this one. This is such a crazy ability. This still is something that I personally like, and that's kind of what it goes back to. Um, we may need to refresh the launch bay next. We lost it. There we go. Let's see. Let's see if I can still do this. I might have just loaded too much at once. Okay, there we go. Now, Gideon Hask in the She Shuttle. While you or a friendly small ship at range 0 to 2 performs a primary attack against a damaged defender, if the attacker rolled 2 or fewer attack dice, it may gain 1 strain token to roll 1 additional attack die. This one, with just FO spam, all of your FOs become 3-die attacks when you're trying to take down those key pieces. You get 1 damage on Fen Rao, and suddenly all of your ships are plinking him at range 3 with 3 dice, or range 1 with 4 dice. No, excuse me, range 3 with 3 dice. So Hask's ability to supercharge the offense of an FO swarm haunts my dreams, and I'm pretty shocked that he gets so little play. People love flying getting Hask pilot in the foe, and I think that's one of the reasons he gets looked over. But this is one that I think can really supercharge the offense of the faction that already has plenty of defense. And he's really good with FO bombers. He's good with SFs shooting out the rear. He's good with a lot, a lot of stuff. And I just think that he is underrated. And especially coming in at 9 points, he's pretty much a budget pick. And that's completely without crew. So we haven't even put tech or crew on him to really supercharge him even more. And let's see, what did I do? Because I had a whole build around this. Malorus is good. Yeah. Yeah, Malorus is a great one because that does just kind of buff offense from all of your ships. There's a lot of different things you can do with this. And another option, I really like him with Hondo because his ability is passive, so he can cruise around the map just coordinating your ships as well. I like Hondo because he lets you coordinate up to range 3, which is great. And also you can flip him to nerf an enemy ship as well. So you can jam it up to range 3. If you're up against Fen Rao, being able to pull off an evade or a focus token from him at range 3, obviously very good, especially if most of your guns are initiative 3, you can do it before. Well, actually, that doesn't even matter because that's in the activation phase. Yeah, so being able to jam Fen is a really powerful piece. And this guy with, oh, actually, hang on. I think he got nerfed. Does Hondo fit? We need, yes, Hondo fits. Boom, there we go. And this again, this is me beating on my old drum. If you've watched me for any length of time, you know I love Hondo Crew and I love jank like this. But I think that FO chassis are so good that this is such a massive bump in power. Like if Andrew is good, why is this guy not good? So anyway, and then Ollie's vote, he said just the really the generic. Okay, so the Falmer. Oh no, no, not the not. Oh yeah, this one was a terrifying bit. I hadn't even considered this, and this was his vote. He's clearly very big on generics, but for 9 points, FO gets a shielded tie interceptor. It's I3, but it's got 3 base native attack dice and shields. So it's got the extra hit point and an extra shield on top of the Imperial tie interceptor, plus the other crazy stuff it can do. And it has a tech and talent slot, and I believe comes stock with the target lock action. So you don't even need targeting computer. So that's one of the things when I talk about the raw stats of FO terrifying me is a tie interceptor with shields and the target lock action before you even put on upgrades is so good. Um, 9 points is high, but that's only 1 point higher than Drew in the Z95. At 50 points, you can have a ton of these. Three of these comes in at, um, yeah, that gets much, but two of them comes in at 18 points, which is very reasonable for two of these to put in a list. Um, they are frightening. You could actually do five of them and still have 5 points left over to put into Typho or something. So like, you could do a six-ship list with these things, and they will comfortably mulch any other equivalent swarm out there. Yeah, so this is one that I was deeply concerned by immediately. Yeah. Next up, we are into Republic, and this is one where these may be more impactful changes again, and these are things that I don't see anyone talking about that both have had strong abilities that I've always looked at, but also right now maybe just the thing to really help the current meta. Harkin is really, really good. I really like him with the option to take multiple target locks. Your R3, you can take multiple target locks. His ability reads, during the system phase, you may choose an object that you have locked at range 1 to 3, so you can have two of them. Another friendly ship at range 1 to 3 may acquire a lock on that option, or on that object. Now note, he doesn't lose his lock, so he can keep redoing this as long as he's holding the locks on these opposing ships, and he can carry two locks. He's so strong in that point, and I don't know what else you put on him, but as an 8 point support ship, this adds rerolls to your force. So this automatically gives you a chance to do double modded attacks with any other two ships in your excuse me, with any ship in your list. And it is such an advantage because this can also chain to synced console. So he can gain target locks, and then also other ships who gain the free target lock can pass them to others. After you perform an attack, you may choose a friendly ship at range 1 or a friendly ship with a synced console upgrade at range 1 to 3 and spend a lock you have on the defender. If you do, the friendly ship may acquire a lock on the defender. Now, synced console takes away your target lock. Tarkin doesn't. So he can keep feeding your synced consoles, so you give Anakin a target lock. Anakin synced consoles one of your other ships, and you keep lather, rinse, and repeat to give your ships target locks starting at I6 and chaining down from there without Anakin ever having to take a target lock. Tarkin is the one that front loads that to give the target lock to your high initiative ship that doesn't want to get target locks itself. And this is without a coordinate. So it's range 1 to 3. And the range on the bubble's huge. The ability's passive. Tarkin does have to hold the lock at some point and get it at some point, but he can get it from sync console and then pass it to others as well in the following turn. But his abilities always looked incredible to me as somebody who doesn't fly Republic and wishes I had a pilot who had that ability. And in Republic, it's even better. And again, like I said, if you give that to Ada Anakin, not Ada Anakin, um, Aether Sprite Anakin, one of the Delta 7Bs that hits really, really hard, that gives you such good, kind of reliable offensive buffs, especially with list sizes typically being smaller. That's a really good counter to aces. It's a really good counter to Fen because it gives you that reliable offensive output. Like it's very good. And I never see Tarkin flown, and I've never really understood why. And then Ollie said, yeah, let's see. On the First Order ship, he said, "It's being flown, but I'm not sure people fully understand just how bonkers that ship is in the hands of a good pilot, especially again with the tech slot that you can do in FO and do crazy stuff with that." Um, Republic, he says, the Gold Squadron Torrent, your typical Torrent, which I love to see that because it is this like very signature ship of the Republic. Yeah, Gold Squadron Trooper coming in at 6 points. 6 points with two loadout. They can't do very much. Take up space, take objectives, pain in the ass to kill. Yeah, all right, all right. And then these don't have a talent, but they can take synced console. So you can have your little synced console carriers in there. These guys are cheap. At 6 points, you can have a bunch of those and then a couple high-powered Jedi to round out your list and have decent board coverage with really good consistent offense. And you could probably have enough points to shave up some of your pieces here too. But say two of these, like two Gold Squadron Troopers and Tarkin, gives you synced console coverage, gives you the reliable locks, and it's only 20 points. So you still have 30 points to spend on AC punchy pieces and make a 5 ship list that's pretty nasty. So there's that. So maybe it takes both of those. Okay. And then finally, our last faction, we had similar opinions on this kind of. Yeah. And for this one, it's pretty funny that we came to similar ideas. So I think, that's not the gauntlet, that the Deathwatch Warrior, being a 15-point gauntlet with 20 loadout, a 15-point gauntlet already is a budget piece, especially in a faction that can flood the board with 5-point ships. So this guy plus one droid is only 20 points. And it's a gauntlet that can take all the stuff that gauntlets can take, including some of CIS's excellent crew. Like you can take Dooku on here comfortably, easily, and you can take gunners on here, you can take bombs on here. You can do so much with this ship at that price point with that loadout. So it's really just a bucket that you put stuff on, but it's a good bucket, and there's a lot of stuff you can fill it with. And then Ollie said, he said, let's see, oh yeah, okay, this was a funny one, and he seemed a little self-conscious about this choice. Um, I guess it's just this one. Yeah. So for 2 points over my cheap generic gauntlet, you can take Darth Maul and the Infiltrator. The Infiltrator is in a much better place than it has been in this current meta. Excuse me. And Maul's double tap is better than ever because you're going up against smaller lists. He's a pilot that can comfortably wade through swarms, no problem, and also is very good at punching through durable ships, which it sounds like some of the ships in the meta right now that are problematic would not want to face a double tapping Maul. You can run these together for 32 points and then fill with a bunch of other stuff. So there's a lot you can do with that. So the Deathwatch Warrior could still be your blocker, could be your meat shield, could be your Dooku carrier, and Maul could be in there just doing his thing, or Dooku or Sidious actually. There's oof, yeah. I don't think taking these two is the best use of points, one or the other, but I mean both of them can work, and you can even do a pretty scary list that then also throws in like Sun Fac and still have some points to play with. Let's see. So that's 32 points right now. If we also did Sun Fac, who is, I know, expensive. Sun Fac. Still have 5 points. So you could do these guys in a generic droid. Yeah, not great, but you can do it. And these three plus a generic objective runner droid actually is a really, really hard-hitting list. Hmm. Let's see. Now I'm going to check one other source real quick before we go on here and see if I have another list of underrated pilots. Let's search here. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Hondo Crew. And so just talking through this, I talked about how much I love Hondo Crew. One thing I always want to do is take Tapusk, the I-5 Scum Hawk, and put Hondo Crew on him, which is still one of my favorite pieces, and it's never worked. Just because the loadout has never really matched up with that. And especially since Tapusk now lost the title, I feel like it's not as bad as it was. But we'll get, that's my hell to die. Let's see. Uh, okay. I do have Liam's votes here at least. Yeah. So we got Liam Baker too. Let's look at that as well. And I think I have the others too, but let's go ahead and look at this. So for, ooh, okay. And he's got multiple choices here. So for CIS, Liam Baker said, ooh, interesting. DAS3 blah de blah. And this is custom. He said custom DIS3. Oh, okay. Custom DIS 347 saying at the start of the engagement phase, you may acquire a lock on an object in range 3 that has a friendly lock. Yeah, that's pretty solid. And network calculations, of course. So free target locks has network calculations, can take calcs, is 9 points. Like that's very, very good at that price point. And then, of course, he says SureTech, who's the best thing ever. SureTech being while you perform a primary attack, if the defender is tractored, you may reroll up to 2 attack dice, being good because he can tractor opposing ships if you give him Ensnare. So yes, and also he has the double talent, so he can take Ensnare and Gravitic Deflection. So you get the extra defense and needs the target lock. So you can also give him targeting computer. Although he doesn't need that as much if he has the reroll, but it's nice to have just in case you don't, and also he can use his native reroll and then feed target locks to DIS 347. So these guys are both very good and good in combination. Then we've got Doofus 081. That is the Vulture, really. And this is Siege of Coruscant. Yeah. So 6 points here. This is the, oh wow, yeah. While defending, you may spend 1 charge and 1 calculate token. And I believe he has 1 charge to cancel 1 critical result. So he's a vulture that can't be critted, but it has 6. He costs 6. He's cheap. So these 3 altogether is only 25 points, and there's a lot you can do with this. And then you can feed in the cheaper stuff too. Got contingency protocol, Discord missiles, strut lock override. Wow. Okay. So he can't park on rocks for the objective thing that makes the vultures so good, but you can take other vultures for that. His durability is really good. And then IG 102? No. Okay. Not a gauntlet. I do really think that the sort of generic rogues and separatists are really underrated. I've talked about that before. So IG 102 is the rogue fighter who has network calculations, which is super strong, especially on a rogue. And has while you defend, if the attacker's initiative is equal to or greater than yours, you may change 1 blank result to an eyeball result. So network calculations plus a way to get free eyeballs on anything I5 or better, which, oh, excuse me, I4 or better, which is most of the meta right now. Um, yeah, it's a really good defensive trait, and with his 5-2 durability profile already, it makes him really hard to deal with, and he can take synced laser cannons to have that native 3 attack. That's pretty good. And I could see these again, all threes together is 35 points. You still have 15 points to play with to fill out your list. That could be another 3 vultures, it could be a 10 and a vulture. You've got a lot you can do with that. Or it could just be that gauntlet I keep talking about, and then you have that. Although with network calculations there, you want multiple ships that can calculate. So there is that. And this is not a complete list, but let's go ahead and look at the other. We're looking at Scum. And this, yeah, these are a couple names that are going to be familiar, but the ones that I haven't heard about as much or seen come up as much in the current 50-point meta. Boba's been on such a high that Ammon, everyone's previous favorite Boba Light, doesn't come up there. But his ability to chuck bombs is super strong, and he's got more than enough loadout to bring them in now. So that's pretty good. Then, of course, we've got Torkel Nux in the Hawk, who we did talk about. He's apparently a meta menace and is also only 9 points, which is, I want to say, the cheapest he's ever been with 10 loadout. So he can take my favorite. He can take my favorite crew. He can take, where are you? Hondo. He can take Hondo and have 3 points left to go. I don't think he gets access to the title, which is a bummer. But his ability is really good, especially in a low ship count ace meta. He can make Fen Rao an I1. excuse me, you can make Fen Rao I0, so Fen Rao just gets his butt kicked before he gets a chance to shoot. So he won't have his offensive mods, maybe, and you have a chance to take him down or seriously hurt him, maybe even hit him a nasty crit before he messes with your list. And that applies to Fen Rao and any other ace you're able to catch in that forward turret arc. Pretty darn good. And then, of course, he mentions all of the IG aggressors. And now their points costs have been interestingly shaped. So particularly IG88D coming in at 15 is really, really good, especially since you can give his ability to other ships as well, because, and he's the one that he lets you double calculate. Yeah, okay, interesting. And this is 42 points. You could run this and still have 8 points to play with, but I wouldn't say it's a great list. But the Brobots that you can run, the Brobots again in concert. So he's the cheapest. And then if we go with the most expensive for good reason, and then if we go with the Cannony one, it's 48. Okay, so if you can't run all four of them, and if you run IG the 17.1 really comfortably to build an actual list with these guys, you can run three, but you probably want to run two plus some backup. And that's where those cheaper ships that we talked about could come in. Hmm, yeah, you can play with this. And he's the transfer one. Yeah, okay. Oh, he's the cannon one. He's the sloopy one. So the cheap one is the sloopy one. Yeah, okay. And then IG88A, the expensive one, is the one who can pass around calculates, which combos very nicely with my buddy Darkgore. So it all comes back together. It all comes back together. Look at that. So we got Gargor. So now you have 10 points still to spend. Double Robots plus Gargor. They have the ability to share or gain extra calculate tokens. And yeah. And IGA can pass his cat. Whoa, wait, hang on. So we got a 10 points here. We can find a really good crew carrier with a cannon. That is always funny. So that could be CAD. I'm trying to remember. And now the thing about IGA is he combos with Gargor. He also combos with Forlom, and he combos with actually you know what, let's tweak this. Let's muck around with this. Combos with any ship with calculate, which actually there are quite a few in Scum. Where's my potato? It's funny, these icons are also wrong. I don't know that any of those have a calculate. Who has a calculate? The G1A. So we can do Forlom, and then we can do a rogue. And now I don't remember if Dirge has access to the title. I don't think he does. Okay, we're at 48 again. So we can put the Xanadu Blood title and IG88D crew on here. So now you're able to transfer any number of your calculate tokens, as your one of your calculate tokens from IG88A to any of these three ships, because they all have calculate now. Um, and actually, now CAD can as well. So we also want to give him overtune modulators, because now he can overtune modulators and then pass a calculate token to one of the other ships as well. So, huh, yeah, there's a lot you can do with that. So if you have a crew slot and modulators, and this still is only four, so you could change out one of these guys and give up, and they don't get calculates. But CAD and IG80A being able to share tokens back and forth with each other is fun. But again, this is nowhere near the power level of the stuff we've already been talking about. So we take a 12. What is A and D? Zuckus is 12. Also, wow, he's also 12. Dang. Okay. Anyway, let's finish this up. I do have two more factions to look at, but I did want to tinker around with that. Now, of course, Forlom does not have the option to take a calculate token, I don't think. Yes, he does. Let's see. During the system phase, you may spend 3. During the upgrade as you're activating, perform actions that execute red maneuvers even while stressed. So somehow he has a way to get calculate tokens. Yeah, and I love that this has the option finally to do the tractor beam and a primary attack. I don't see how you get calculate tokens. Forlom lets you spend them, but I think this is just not showing it. Does have a way also to gain tractor tokens, or gain calculate tokens. That doesn't put calculate tokens on its bar though, so that is still not going to be a feed for IG88A. Yeah, anyway. All right, so next up we have Empire, and this is a name I have not seen dropped since we've been talking about this, but is a very frightening pilot who has had his time in the sun and has been outclassed a little bit by other options. But Jendon at 20, Vader at 22, they are expensive. And if you're shaving points a little bit, the I5 Rexler Brath Defender is still a really good one. Um, and he comfortably gets evade, he gets the free evades, and then he can flip opposing damage cards into crits. So you can take a face down card and flip it to a face up card. Nice. Okay. And then we're looking at first order, our last one, and then I don't have anything else to look at. So that is going to be the end of our video. Appreciate your patience. So we're looking at Revis and Nightfall. I believe those are both FOs. Revis, I remember being the cheap one for a while. The cheap one being the one you saw on every single list ever. I actually don't see him at midnight. Let's see. Nightfall. Hey. Lieutenant Revis. Okay, so Revis is he is a TIFO. Oh, it starts with an L. Ah, so I messed this up. So Lieutenant Revis starts with an L. Oh, for crying out loud. No. Oh, I'm getting tired. Sorry about this, folks. There he is. Right. Okay, there's Revis. So he's in here. And then we're going to look at the other one as well. Nightfall. Ooh. And I believe Nightfall is a silencer. No. Nightfall. Oh, it's a whisper. Oh, I love it. Okay. There we go. Okay. So looking at these, Rebus, after a ship range 0 to 2 or 1 to 2, gains a red or orange token. If you do not have that ship locked, you may acquire a lock, which is so good. So free target locks is excellent, and he is only 7 points for a named TIFO. He's I1, so you have a lot of time for that to trigger, and he is a good blocker. Nightfall, the I4, after you fully execute a maneuver or perform a boost action, each ship you moved through gains 2 jam tokens. High Whisper that has the rear arc and is also very, very fast. That's very good. So, and especially with the enhanced jamming suite stapled on here, I could see both of those being underrated pieces. With Revis coming in at 7 is a budget piece, and then Nightfall coming in at 11, a little bit less budget, but the Whisper has so many tools available, especially with 11 loadout. That's good. And free target locks are good, and jam tokens are going to be really powerful dealing with some of the ships that are really causing havoc right now. So it's pretty good. Okay, I can see those being underrated. Let's see, and let's see if I have any more. And we've talked about this a little bit more, but we've had a busy chat, so I'm looking at these. Dalen came up as somebody we don't like. Uh, yeah, G4R, Tirani. You know what? We'll talk about this one. This is the one I've got popped in here. Tirani's expensive. Okay, so we're gonna look at this one. This is one more. This is one I've got from my buddy Mad King. And this is a ship that I ran a ton in second edition. I ran it all the time, and a pilot too. Now, coming in at 13 is really, really iffy, especially since with lower ship counts, his ability is not going to trigger as much. But Tirani Golda, the I4 Kimagila, after you perform an attack, each enemy ship in your bullseye suffers 1 damage unless it removes 1 green token. So the if that hits, the power on that is so incredibly crazy. And I really like him either with cluster missiles or snapshot, because both of those let him shoot twice, and each attack triggers that ability. So if you have things lined up before or after you attack, you can hit multiples of them. And cluster missiles gives you the most control over it. Snapshot means that it can be triggered accidentally, but does give you auto damage. So if you snapshot something, the attack triggers before they activate, so that before they get actions themselves. So the trigger window is less, and it triggers even if they're not in your bullseye, which is a bummer. But it is a way where you can trigger his ability to get extra free damage. So that is snapshot. Of course, you only get 1 bonus attack per turn, so you can't trigger it multiple times. But after an enemy ship executes a maneuver, you may perform this attack as a bonus attack at range 2. I like cluster missiles because they can also catch things at range 1. Um, but snapshot tends to get some hits, and it's pretty darn good to have that and just get the free damage from Tirani, especially if there's a big ship out there, a medium base that's easy to hit, they're going to hit multiple times. They start taking damage really fast. Now, again, he's 13 points. The dial on thing is utter garbage, just because it can't turn around at all. It has no way to clear stress on a hard turn and has no way to do the only K turn it has is a relatively short 4. So its dial is really, really limited. But as just like a roving gunboat, it's pretty darn good. But I think it's too pricey at 13. Not that Scum needs the help. But I do think that Tirani is a oft forgotten piece who still has a lot to offer. It is late. I'm going to take one last quick look here. And what I wanted to cover here is that this is Metawing. This is a list of all the pilots that are being flown right now in tournament lists. And I looked from October 26th, so the last time we had a points change to now. And I'm just looking at all the stuff that's not being flown. Dormits, Light and Dre, like there's a lot of stuff here. Night Beast, Captain Jonas. Captain Jonas is still really, really good. Um, I'm just kind of seeing what is being flown, but barely. The Mining Guild Surveyor is really bad to Scum. Just because it gives you nothing. It gives you nothing. It's not that cheap, and it doesn't have any loadout. It's an I2 tie. Like, it's not showing up much. Jack Porkins? Either Jack Porkins. Wow, both Jack Porkins are almost none. And this is a little bit noise because it's everything that has 1 appearance. So there's just so much stuff in here. Let's see if any of the ships we mentioned came up. Merle Cobbin, underrated. Genesis Red is terrible because she doesn't have linked actions, and is I4. Chopper and the Gauntlet, I think, is probably underrated too, but he's only appeared once. Vizier is in here, and Vizier, that's surprising. I do feel like Vizier is a really strong piece and is in a good place right now, so I don't know why he's not showing up. I think it's relative cost, that the alternative option is just cheaper. DFS 311, Horchal Prototype. Gavin Sykes is a name I literally never seen. Kickback. Kickback is still coming up. Wow. And then the generic banana. Really? The generic Naboo Starfighter. Huh. And then we're slowly, I saw a couple 2 appearances, Omicron Group Pilot, Barris Offie, Alexander Callis. Yes, there's stuff down here. I'm not. Oh, there's Andrew. There he is. 1 appearance. And then Hask in the FO. Okay. Leia Falcon for Rebels. Vanessa Doza in the T-70, who I think is underrated because she can shoot torpedoes out the back. She also can make advanced proton torpedoes up to range 2 at the rear, so that's fun. Zay Versio, Imdar test pilot, the generic Phantom. Pure Sabak in the Striker. Oh yeah, that's pretty good, but man, high risk. Lieutenant Laurier is a really good interceptor. Hera in the shuttle, Arvel printed. And we're starting to get a little bit more common here. So not a ton of our ships have come up. So they are low play rate, probably, and they're also on the upper end for win rate, mostly, except in Drew. Sorry, Ollie. Let's see. Oh, there's Tarkin. So he does have one appearance, and he's on the upper end of the win rate with 20%, but he's only had one appearance, so that's not terribly helpful. Patrick, and I won't take too long on this. Sir Linda Javos is cool. There is Xwing Wedge. Moving up, moving up. Hask and the Imperial Hask and the Interceptor is also pretty good. Tapusk, my beloved Tapusk, just sitting here at the bottom of the win rate. I don't know what you can really do with him that makes him worth taking right now. If Republic goes off the rails with Jedi spam, then Tapusk will be good for just denying that force regen. If Vader becomes a big problem, maybe. There's DIS 347. So they're coming up a little bit. But one of the whole point of this was to show ships that people maybe aren't thinking about that are very good. There's Mace, there's Bosk in the YV. I don't even touch on the YV666. It's not coming up at all, but it's still very good. Q9, there's no reason to take him now because you take Mando. The generic Zealous Recruit Fang is not costed great. Dar Saxon, Green Throne, Tabson, Cutlass, Zeb. I'm not really seeing many of ours, and I know there's hundreds to pull from. So few appearances of Delta 7 Anakin. And of course, Delta 7B is better, but I wonder if Delta 7 is worth taking if the points work out. You'd have to have a lot of loadout. Oh, I love these. The Battle of Yavin, TIE Interceptors, the standard loadouts. Those are awesome. Tomax. God, how the mighty have fallen. Tomax is just way here at the bottom. Let's actually see if we've got any of ours. So let's look for G4. Some appearances, high percentile for the number of appearances he's got. So he does come up. Then we saw it in Drew. Let's see if we're looking at Thai BA. Look for Von Reagan. And he's in the Thai dash BA. There it is. The First Order Provocateur is coming up. Some people are running it, but again, the question was, are they aware of how bonkers it is? And it's appearing higher than Ember for Ember. Okay, there's one. Is it the SA? No, that's the Bomber. So we got Major Rhymer coming up a little bit. Yeah, there's stuff there. I won't go into this too much. I could spend this all night, but this has been a long enough video as is. Appreciate the time. Hopefully this has at least sparked some conversations. There's a lot to be talking about here about the world's meta that we're going into. We might get a minor adjustment from the XWA, but it's so close to Worlds now that talking about the timing for Worlds prep, if people are prepping for Worlds, they really don't want to see a meta shift right now. So iffy, but we'll see. I think that's it. Till next time. Cheers.